Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. Well, for one thing, Revengeance is not a real word, but that has never stopped Kojima from doing anything, has it? Absolutely not. Who is that handsome fellow? That is, of course, Raiden, or Raiden, whichever you prefer. He's got a red eye. That seems inconvenient when doing stealth stuff, but thankfully he's given up most of the stealth stuff, and he's taken up a little bit, slap chop. Let's just put it that way. So this game actually came out last year. In fact, the year before that. No? Last year? Yeah, it was last year. It wasn't in 2012. It was actually fairly early 2013, and it came out on PS3 and Xbox 360. Kind of to be expected, considering Platinum Games, the developer of this, don't usually make games for PC. They're a Japanese developer, which means they usually avoid the platform. However, they've decided to bring one of them to PC in the form of Metal Gear Rising. Now, this brings me great joy, because Platinum Games is one of my favorite developers, which is going to sound really weird, because let's be honest, I'm a PC guy, and yet my favorite dev only makes games for consoles. That's just how it is. It was a long time ago that I had the wonderful experience of playing both God Hand and Okami on my PS2. I had just come out of university, and I got a job at Game because no one was hiring. So, it's the usual story of anyone that comes out of university, I guess. I got whatever job I need to pay the rent, I got a job at Game, and they gave you a discount on used consoles, so I was able to buy a used PS2 at the time, and I was able to get God Hand and Okami for it, and why, just so good. And you might think, well, that's not relevant, right? It's Platinum Games. They didn't make that. They actually did. At least most of them did. Clover Studios was the now defunct development house that developed that, and then they became Platinum Games. So, here's the big question. We'll get onto the gameplay in a moment. As usual, the first half of the video will be dedicated to whether or not the PC version is any good. This is particularly pertinent with a game like Metal Gear Rising because Platinum has never made a PC game ever. They've never ported a game over to PC. So this to me was very worrying. We know about the Dark Souls thing, where it had to be extensively modded in order to actually make it any good. Is Metal Gear Rising that bad? No, it isn't. But it has its issues. So, let's talk about them a little bit. Okay, first things first, graphics options here. This menu is actually fully controlled by the mouse, if you so desire, which is a surprise considering this is something that EA can't usually even get right. So we go to graphics options, we'll see what's available here. Not a huge amount. So, I don't want to change resolution here. I would, but it will break the video, because they made the ridiculous decision of having it change the resolution every time you click the button. Now, usually what you'd have in a PC options menu is the ability to change the resolution and then click apply, once you've got the one you want. In this case, there's no drop-down menu, which means that if you want to get the resolution you want, you've got to skip through all the others, and it's got to change res, change res, change res. That'll break the video. Resolution options are a little bit limited. When I loaded the game, it started in 720p, so that's 1280 by 720, in windowed mode, which was a little odd. But I assume that's because on console the game was at 720p. Now, I only noticed one 16 by 10 resolution option, native, which is 1680 by 1050. The rest of them was 16 by 9. So the resolution options are a little bit limited. Beware. Full screen on or off works absolutely fine, had no problem with that. You've got 3 graphics presets, low, medium, and high, and then you get custom if you mess around with anything here. So I turned off blur, I always turn off blur, I hate motion blur, it's a waste of time. And you've also got AA and texture filter here. And again, I don't want to click any of these because it might mess with the video, because it applies them instantly every time you click them, which is very silly. So I've got this cranked up to as high as it goes, which is MSAA times 8 and Anisotropic times 16, which helps a little bit. And then turn off blur, shadows are on high, and then you've got Zinkaki and Zantime. Now, these are related to the number of slices that you can do on an object and enemy, and how long the pieces of that enemy remain on the screen. This is quite relevant because when I was streaming this earlier, now admittedly, streaming at 60 FPS does take a little bit out of your computer, but when I was streaming it, when I had this on high, if I sliced things up too much, it started to drop the frame rate. So I knocked it down to medium, and I've never had it drop below 60 since. That's probably a really good piece of news for those of you who are worried that this wouldn't run at 60. Funnily enough, on console, the game actually ran at 60. So it would have been a little bit weird if the port didn't. The game does run at 60. It doesn't go any higher than that, which is a bit disappointing. I'd love to see this at 120. Maybe that will be unlocked later on by some enterprising modder. I looked through the config files. I couldn't find anything that would let me do that, but then again, I'm not too savvy in that respect. And it pretty much stays at 60 the entire time. I've not had it drop at all outside of what I just mentioned with those two options. However, the cutscenes in the menu are at 30 FPS, so it's a little bit jarring to see the difference. It's hard to know whether or not the things are pre-rendered. I don't think they are. I think they're rendered in-engine. I didn't see any of the usual artifacting that would indicate a compressed video file. That said, when I went into the Steam Apps folder, I found the video files took up the vast majority of the 28 gigabyte install that this game requires, so it's very possible they just didn't compress them at all. Alright. Key config, yes, it is available, and yes, it works. You can rebind pretty much everything here. It's a little annoying because in order to get to the bottom menu here, which actually has a couple of extra options, you've got to scroll down either with the up and down cursor keys or with the mouse wheel here. What's also a little bit annoying is the fact that they have a weapon select screen, which is actually not required on a PC because obviously you've got enough buttons for that to not be a factor, so that's a little bit irritating. There's your switch lock-on right there, fire sub-weapon, everything is really as you would expect, and they're bound to sensible keys. So if you played anything like, say, Darksiders on PC, you'll be pretty used to how they deal with the attacks. You've got your buttons there, you do have your mouse for camera control. Now, camera control is a little tricky in this game. In fact, it's tricky in a lot of Platinum games, but that's something you will have to learn. And on default settings, which is 5, I found the camera to be very, very slow. So I turned it up to 8. However, when I did that, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, it's very difficult to confirm that, it seemed like there was a little bit of mouse acceleration going on, meaning that the speed was very inconsistent as a result. So that's something to consider. Now, languages. Unfortunately, oh, I think it does have Japan there, but I'm not sure if this gives you English captions if you go for that. So the voice acting is, as you might imagine in a Metal Gear game, legendarily bad. Pretty cheesy, the writing's kind of ridiculous as well. But I think you can turn it to Japanese, but I don't know if the captions will stay in English. Hard to say. And then you've got sliders for music, sound effects, and voice, each with 10 presets. A little bit limited, but okay. Should you play this on a keyboard, or should you play it on a controller? Okay, I tried it on the keyboard. Most of it is playable. I think it might be a little bit more difficult later on when your parries have to be more precise. Mostly it works fine, though. The standard sort of enemy-to-enemy combat is absolutely fine with keyboard and mouse. Obviously, it feels a little bit weird because you're turning in only 8 directions, so that digital movement seems a little clunky, but it works fine. However, Blade Mode doesn't, from what I can tell. So using Blade Mode with a mouse is very, very awkward. Much more awkward than using the right stick. It's harder to get the precise cuts that you're looking for, and usually that will mean you're limited to either horizontal or vertical slashes. Now, those of you who've played the game know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, I'll demonstrate it. The one other problem that you're going to see, and you may even notice it in the menu actually, is the texture quality is not very good. Now, the texture quality in the PC version, from what I can tell, is exactly the same as the console. Now, the console version wasn't that great to begin with because they wanted a 60 FPS game, so they really had to limit the other graphical aspects of it. It's still a decent-looking game at high speed, but when you stop to look at anything, you will notice the textures are very low resolution, and that has continued through to the PC version. That's very disappointing, considering the PC should be able to deal with that, and it's very unlikely that they created the textures originally at that low res. What usually happens when you're making a game, you create the textures at higher res, and then you downscale them until you find the level that you need. So they could have put the higher res textures in this, but it doesn't appear that they have. They may be in the file somewhere, possibly, but it's unlikely. So that is pretty disappointing. So PC port-wise, as we continue into this, it's solid. I wouldn't call it great. Oh, apparently we're doing the boss fight again. All right, never mind then. I actually beat this on the stream, but it looks like it didn't save, so I guess we're doing the boss fight. Here we go. This will be a good demonstration of me getting my ass kicked. Okay, so, welcome to Metal Gear Rising. It's a little bit quick on the pace, as I think you might have just noticed there. It is a fast-paced character action game or spectacle fighter, whichever you prefer to call it. You play as Raiden, you have a sword. You're pretty fantastic. The game doesn't have dodging in it, which is even crazier. But it replaces that with a parry mechanic, which I'm about to demonstrate by being awesome! Alright, here we go. Actually, that's assuming they get a chance to even hit me. Which they might not. Now, here's the thing. You've got to bear in mind that I absolutely adore this game. And I played a good... I didn't finish it on PS3, but I rarely ever finish games because I usually don't have the time. But it is extremely enjoyable, and I played a lot of it on the PlayStation 3. So I already know what I'm thinking about this game. And you're thinking, oh, but you're only an hour in. How could you possibly know? I already know because I already played the console version. Because I go out of my way to play the console version of anything the Platinum makes. Which, again, sounds weird as a PC gamer, but it's Platinum. That's just the way of it. So, this is a bit fast-paced. And you might be thinking, well, what the hell is going on? It's understandable that you'd be confused, and I'm getting my ass kicked here, which is terrible. I beat this on stream pretty well, but I also wasn't commentating at the time, so... Alright. You've got light and heavy attacks, and you also have a parry mode, and the parry mode is actually extremely important, because you can't dodge in this game, which is unusual for spectacle fighter-style games. Most of those rely on dodge, this relies on parry. In order to parry, you press attack and forward in the direction that the enemy is while they are attacking in order to successfully parry and then counter-attack. If you parry too early, things usually don't go well for you, as you might imagine. That didn't go too well for me, but it's okay, because we can do that. Oh, yes. Don't worry about it. There we go. So that was a successful parry right there. You see the sparks. I can parry pretty early against these guys because they're quite slow. So, usually not something to really worry about. And then you chase them around and you slice them into tiny little kibbles, and it's extremely satisfying to do. There are a couple of other things to bear in mind, however, and we will actually see that here. So what you can do is you can grab the still beating heart out of these cybernetic organisms, destroy that heart, and get a bunch of your health and energy back. It's vitally important for keeping your combos together and making sure that you always have enough health. Alright, time to rock and roll. This is the last stage of the boss right here. So we're going to try not to suck if at all possible. There we go. Now what is this? This is Blade Mode. Now Blade Mode allows you to attack extremely rapidly with your sword, and to target specific parts of the body, which sounds gimmicky, but it's actually required. Very much so. So that is something to bear in mind there. Very much required in order to take out certain enemies, knock off pieces of armor, and things like that. There we go. Parried most of that, and time to finish this guy off. There we go. Wasn't the best run. I could have done that a lot better, but I'm a little bit out of practice. Slice it into pieces. And you can. And he will come into pieces, by the way. It even counts how many parts he's into. It's kind of wonderful. It is kind of damn wonderful.
Liberate nation. Ensure freedom. Obey directive. Must obey directive. No freedom. Freedom undefined.
What would an AI know about freedom?
Very nice. C. That's pathetic. I can do way better than that. But hey, it's a Platinum game. That means that they're a little bit strict with giving out ranks. So if you want an S rank, you better do it damn perfectly. Alright, so that was a boss fight that we just got thrown into right there. There's actually, I think, the third. Yeah, pretty sure it was the third boss fight that I've seen in the first sort of hour or so of this game. There's a lot of boss fights, and they're all pretty great. Alright. So, what to talk about mechanics-wise? I've already talked about the port, and I think you can see quite obviously if you look at, say, wall textures, really anything textures, honestly, that they are lacking somewhat in definition. They're pretty low resolution, they don't look good, and that's very disappointing, because I would have expected better. However, when you talk about the mechanics of the game, and you talk about how it controls, that's where things get interesting, because, frankly, the game is one of the most enjoyable of this genre that I've ever had the pleasure of playing. It's extremely fun. And I like the fact that, unlike most of these games, it does not focus on dodging. It focuses on parrying. It's very much a game about swordplay. And it does a damn good job at it, I have got to say. It allows for some really fantastic scenes and some absolutely awesome mechanics like that. And I messed that up, unfortunately. I wanted to cut his heart out mid-air, and yes, you can absolutely do that. There we go. The action is fast-paced. Once you get used to the parrying, you can beat pretty much anything in the game, but it still requires you to pay attention, because you're dealing with multiple enemies at any given time. And certain enemies have some really nasty attacks and stuff that is more difficult to avoid. Evasion is in the game. You can use something called Ninja Run, which does this, basically, and allows you to kind of parkour over most obstacles. and that will allow you to avoid some attacks coming at you, but for the most part, what you want to be doing is parrying attacks. This includes things in midair. You can also use blade mode to slice projectiles out of the air, which sounds difficult, but it's not quite as challenging as you might imagine. It's still a hell of a lot of fun, though, I've got to say. Blade mode, by the way, also slices up almost everything in the game, with the exception of really heavily armored stuff. So if I want to cut that, I can. There we go. That's actually being cut. And I could give it a bit of a prod, I think. Maybe another cut. And then I could knock it over. There we go. That's pretty cool. And tactically, it's not that useful, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. You can even cut through stairs and mean it's a little bit difficult for you to actually get to your objective, which is quite comical, but I like the fact that that's in the game. Alright, helicopters. Now things start to get really interesting. It is, of course, a Metal Gear game, meaning that there are many, many cutscenes, huge amounts of them, but most of them are really, really good. There's also these running sequences and occasional QTE-style events, like that, just hammer the button. But they're not too excessive, I've got to say. And for the most part, they're very enjoyable because they're extremely cinematic and really fun to watch. The game is OTT up to 11 from the very beginning, and it never, ever stops. And that is what makes it absolutely fantastic. Thankfully, it doesn't overdo it, which is great. Alright. Best way to take this out? Well, I've got a rocket launcher, so I guess I can... That's a grenade. That's not going to help me too much. I need to remember what the button is. There we go. The sub-weapon menu is a little clunky, and this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, is that I think they could have done a much better job of dealing with sub-weapons in this game. There you go, I have one of those. If I recall correctly, I can actually jump up there somehow, but I can't remember. Oh, yes, I think you have to, yeah, you have to get on top of there, and then you can actually get on top of the helicopter, which is kind of great. Hello. There we go. He ran away. How disappointing. Now, I got a slightly different rocket launcher, which annoyingly enough is going to mean that I'm going to have to reselect it there. Select that. Press that button. Ow! That was disappointing. And then we could take him out. Should have sliced that out of the air. That would have been great. In fact, I'm going to try that just to demonstrate how it works, if it's all possible. Come on. Send a missile at me. That's bullets. Bullets are not fair. I don't like bullets. Alright. There we go. Managed to slice that out of the air. That was pretty great. Lock on with the homing missile and fire. There we go. The sub-weapon system is probably the weakest component of the game because it's just annoyingly fiddly to make work. You have to select the sub-weapon in the menu, then you've got to pick up the sub-weapon, get the sub-weapon out with the left bumper on the controller, and then fire it with the right bumper, and it's a little fiddly. Which is somewhat irritating, I've got to say. But it is what it is. I'm not doing too great in this fight. Oh, Christ. Now, for some reason, the game randomly alt-tabs, which I don't really have too much of an explanation for that behavior. It's happened twice in about 2 hours. Something to bear in mind. So let's get back into the fight after that. There we go. As you can see, the game has very much destructible terrain. The strength of the game is in the actual sword fighting, not in the use of the secondary weapons. And some of these fights against stuff that flies, which is a little bit more difficult to hit with your sword, are less enjoyable, I would certainly say. They're the weakest parts of the game. There's even a boss with a helicopter, but that's more fun than you might imagine because you can also do some pretty crazy surfboard stuff on the top of missiles. So at that point, it suddenly becomes a hell of a lot more enjoyable. You can attack this with a sword, but it can... Oh, damn. I missed the opportunity to hit that. So this would have actually allowed me to jump on top of the missiles. In fact, I think it still will, but I'm going to have to actually get to the point when the missiles come up. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. And then you slice the bastard into tiny little pieces. There we go. And that's where that gets really amusing. Fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. Alright, that's that dealt with. I apologize for my terrible, terrible demonstration. I'm surprised it gave me a B grade for that. That was utterly dreadful. The storyline is bizarre, I've got to say, and as is the voice acting, and I think it's going to be a kind of love it or hate it relationship with a lot of people. I'm not really used to the whole Metal Gear style of doing things, so a lot of the way that they do their exposition is very confusing to me. And some of the references I really don't get. Like, I had no idea why those smaller robot things made cow noises, but apparently that's a Metal Gear thing, and a lot of this stuff is a Metal Gear thing. So I'm like, Alright. I don't know what any of that is, but I'm going to accept it blindly because Metal Gear. Fair enough. Alright. Can I save him without horribly murdering him? Possibly. A little bit more difficult. Alright, let's do it. Here we go. Oh, grenade. Watch out for that. Let's get airborne. Still taking a little bit of damage from the air, but nothing too concerning. The lack of a dodge button can be a problem, but you can dash and then do things like slide attacks, which are pretty effective. We'll have all of that. Oh, missed the heart in midair. Disappointing. Disappointing. But he is in pieces, so that's cool too. Incidentally, by the way, if you slice all the limbs off without damaging the body, you actually get more points, because video games. Aye. I think might be time to get the homing missile out. Let's give that a try. That should do the trick. There we go. Much nicer. This is the strength of the game. This combat system is absolutely fantastic. I love the emphasis on cutting your enemies into tiny pieces. I love the emphasis on finesse. It is not just button bashing, and I absolutely love the parrying system. It's extremely satisfying. Every time you parry a hit, there's a slight slowdown in the game. There's this really nice visual and audio response. It feels meaty. You feel that impact, and then you counterattack with a flurry of blows, and it is just awesome to do. I love doing it. I don't think I'll ever get bored of doing that. It is that damn good. Alright, there we go. Hit him in the air. Fantastic. Little bit of damage, and then slice him on the ground and steal his heart. Because why the hell not? There aren't that many games like this on PC that go full on for the whole spectacle fighting thing. You might say, well, Darksiders and Darksiders 2. Well, Darksiders 2 did to a larger degree than the original Darksiders, which is very much a Dark Zelda, whereas they went more down the God of War route with Darksiders 2. But I think that Revengeance does it better than any other game on the platform. And there are still games that I think do it better than Revengeance. Even like Wonderful 101 is a good example on Wii U, I think, which is also by Platinum, by the way. Bayonetta, which is also by Platinum, which was on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. I think that does the action better. It's got a more complex combat system. It's got a little bit more depth to it. But that does not mean that this is not absolutely fantastic. And we don't have access to any of those games. I mean, if you were to get an emulator, then maybe you could pull it off, but, you know, good luck emulating a 360 or anything along those lines. I don't even think it's possible to emulate a Wii U yet, is it? So, yeah, you're not going to be able to enjoy too much of that. You can emulate some of their older games, of course, like God Hand or Mad World on Wii, but things like that, and, of course, Vanquish as well, that was more of a third-person shooter with a bit of spectacle fighter going in for good measure. Now, that stuff, that you cannot unfortunately get on PC. However, you absolutely can get this, and the question is, do I recommend it? Well, here's the thing, like, this game absolutely oozes finesse and just raw fun and over-the-top nonsense at every possible opportunity. It is very, very good at what it does. It knows what it is, it knows how to do it, and frankly, nothing on PC does it better, and I do mean absolutely nothing. Did I get his hand? I might have missed it. I think we might have to do another one. I think I was supposed to slice his hand off, but I have a feeling I messed that up. We'll give it another look over here. See if we got it. Evidently not. Alright. The music is fantastic. The voice acting isn't, but the music is absolutely brilliant. I love it. As a soundtrack, it's absolutely worth listening to. No real argument about that whatsoever. Stealth kill. There we go. Because why not? Presentation-wise, it is a really awesome title in terms of the speed. And, of course, in terms of the things like the particle effects and the combat feedback. The way that it actually shows your various attacks affecting enemies. Slicing enemies into tiny little pieces does not get old. It doesn't. It is extremely entertaining. Alright, let's see. Also, oh, well, you could use that to open the door, or no, we could, I think we can just slice our way through. I might be wrong. Alright, we've got to be a little bit more careful with the way that we slice, though. We're going to do a vertical slice, I think. Maybe not. Let's see, is there another way over the fence? Actually, oh, can't quite remember how you pull this off. Pretty sure it is blade mode that we're supposed to use here, yeah. We're just gonna slice in the right direction. There we go. Got it. Alright, time to kill all a bunch of stuff. Alright, here we go. It is let down a little bit by the visuals, though. Well, it's a shame that they really had to neuter their vision in order to make it work properly on consoles. And I would have hoped it would have been Platinum's opportunity to fix that with the PC version, saying, oh, look, we don't have those limitations anymore. Isn't that great? Well, unfortunately, it seems like they did not do that. The addition of AA and anisotropic is nice, don't get me wrong, and it certainly helps. Take some of the jaggies off, which is always good to see. But even then, it's kind of hard to say that this is an incredible PC port. It's merely acceptable, yeah? It's an average PC port, but funnily enough, considering it's a Japanese developer, it's almost like I'm glad that they just managed to make it work. Considering what Dark Souls did, and plenty of other examples like the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm game, which was an absolute joke on PC as well, and things like Enslaved, which I believe were also poor PC ports, I'm just glad that they didn't screw it up. Because if it was a From Software level of disaster, then that would have been a massive disappointment, but it's not. It plays at the same speed, it basically gives you the same experience as was on console, which is, for the most part, okay. It's also cheaper. They charge $30 for it. You can also get it a bit cheaper on Green Man Gaming, if you can get one of their 25% off discount codes, so keep an eye out for those, and you'll be able to get it for $22.75, I think, and that just gives you a Steam code. That's where I got it, and I got the discount on it, which was pretty great. Put a link in the description below this video if you want to check that out. The gameplay is what really shines here. If you can get over the textures, if you can get over the fact that you're probably going to need a controller, then what you have is an absolutely phenomenal title. And I rail on PC ports for a very good reason. I think that on PC, when you've got more power, that power should be used. I feel that PC right now is the best way for a developer to fully realize their vision and not have to compromise. And unfortunately, it seems like it's not such a case of compromising, it's just they didn't bother to really make it all that much better for PC. It does include the DLC missions, and it is cheaper, so I will give them credit for that. And I'll also give them credit for not completely screwing it up. Is it enough to override the PC concerns? Is the actual game good enough? Yes. Undoubtedly. I mean, the game is absolutely fantastic. It's incredibly enjoyable. If you're looking for a character action game, if you're looking for a spectacle fighter, if you're looking for a game about slicing people up with a ninja samurai sword, well, this game does it better than pretty much everything else. Gameplay-wise, I only have a couple of minor concerns, and one is with the camera. You do kind of have to wrestle with it. There is a lock-on, but it doesn't work incredibly well, and you often have to readjust the camera in order to see what's going on. Usually you'll see warnings from off screen, so you'll be able to do parries and things like that, but yeah, it's a little unfortunate, I'm afraid, that they couldn't have made the camera better. It seems like almost a perpetual problem for Platinum, something that they're struggling with. But once you get used to it, it's absolutely fine. I'm gonna skip through this cutscene here, maybe do a little bit more action for you. It's certainly one of the games that I enjoyed the most last year. It only lost out because Wonderful 101, I think, is a bit of a better game because it has a little bit more originality going for it. But on PC, you're not going to find a game that matches Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. There is nothing better. And that's not to say that this is just merely average, no. As a game, it's just absolutely phenomenally fun. It's just a shame they couldn't have done a little bit better with the PC port. But I guess we should count our blessings. It's not broken. It works absolutely fine out of the box, and it plays the same as the console version, with slightly less jaggies and a few extra options and the DLC included for slightly cheaper. And for a lot of people, that is going to be enough, and honestly, because this game is that damn good, for me, it is enough as well. It's the same principle, I suppose, as people saying, you know what, I'm just glad we have Dark Souls on PC. But what they've done here is a better port than Dark Souls. It runs better, it's configured better for PC, you can actually play it with a keyboard and mouse without having to bloody mod it. It's a damn fun experience. Really enjoyable. Really fun. Requires a decent amount of skill. Happens to have a fantastic combat system. And it's just so damn satisfying. And this never gets old! Also, Cowbot is on me. I'm gonna have to deal with him. I would absolutely recommend it. Honestly, I really, really would. There is no other experience quite like it on the PC platform right now. Ladies and gentlemen, my name has been TotalBiscuit, taking a look right here at Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Currently available on Steam for $30, and bear in mind you might be able to get it cheaper on Green Man Gaming. It is on sale there, also for $30, but they often do a 25% code on the coupon, which actually does apply to this game, because I did try it and was able to get it. But by the time that this video goes up, that coupon is going to be expired. Thing is, they do new coupons almost all the time, so that might be a good option for you if you're looking to get it slightly cheaper, and I wouldn't blame you. Thank you very much for watching, folks, and I will see you next time.